Hello again. Welcome everybody to our next episode of MLP Daily. If you've been following, this is probably going to be something like episode 2.5. We did have an episode, we did have a daily yesterday. However, there were some technical difficulties. One in that I didn't have all my equipment set up. So I was in the editing scene and I was like, all right, we're going to just fix this. I'll do a voiceover. We'll make everything right. But then we were also in our Discord community this morning, and some other people were asking questions about some lovable things, including databases. And we realized that it would be probably pretty important to just go back and showcase the same things again that we had. Make sure that it's clearly stepped through and walked through for all of you guys on this shared lovable journey. And so, yeah, we're basically going to just redo yesterday. There were also some issues with what we implemented, and we could have kept working and stemming from those, but we're going to showcase the history feature, rolling back and lovable. It's a good opportunity for that. And we're going to see if we can more or less do the same things we targeted yesterday and just do them on a clean run this time. So, sweet. We are here inside our app, and you can see we've got some clicking going on. There's a little other weird behavior here. I don't want you to worry about that because I'm going to show you. We go to this history section, and you can see we've got everything that I did yesterday, and then everything that we did the first day. It's got dates. Most recent is here at the top. They actually changed just today. They changed where this history button is. They changed our interface here just a little bit. What's also nice is we don't have to leave this page now to check our daily quota. We just got it right here on this drop down. So lovable, like I've mentioned a time or two or a few already. It is a living product. They're making it better every day. So here we are. We can see our quota right from our app view. You might notice that we've got 6 entries here. That's because we technically got a freebie yesterday, and hopefully I should be able to showcase that to you again today. But what we're gonna do is demonstrate that you see you've got some extra functionality here, and notice maybe that I only have to get to number 30 here, and 30 shows me, 40. Oh, now I have this animated background and some changes that you didn't see in the first episode. Well, what is a little convenient is that if I pick one of these previous versions here, and that's what these are based on the messages that were sent to Lovable. I can pick a previous one, and then I can see the behavior, the state of what our application was at that point in time. Basically, it's keeping track of the history of the conversation and all the versions that we've had. And if something breaks, or if for whatever reason I didn't like something, I can always roll back to a previous version. It's letting me view it here. And if this is what I want, I'll click the button down here for restoring the version. Notice how I don't have my colored background yet. And it wasn't at the lower number like you saw. Now I've got the colored background. And then you can see it's also like the very simple background in the back there. So got this leaderboard working. So there were a few things yesterday that broke. There was the technical difficulties. What we want to do is just go back to the end of the first day. Looks like it's broken. Let's see here. Click this again. Okay, so I have taken us back now to the end of the first day. And just to demonstrate a little bit, you got a little bit of a recap there just a second ago, but we've got the clicking button. It started simple, and then we got to the point where we added little animations, little fireworks. We got to the point that we added something like the leaderboard here. You can come in and see all-time leaderboard, see a daily leaderboard, right? So we had that, then we got to patience. And we're going to re-implement this again today. I tried this yesterday. We're going to make the numbers a little smaller so that for our testing, it's a little easier to get to these, right? We implemented a decision between 2 different buttons, and we started to implement a background. We also had light and dark mode. So that was where we got to end of day 1. Some of the things that we want to do now for episode 2.5 is that we are going to try and improve that background, right? It's really subtle up here in the corner. We're going to add users login, and that means it's going to save our number, because currently when we refresh, right, that number goes away. So we want to keep track of that. So we're going to give people the chance to log in to be able to save that. And then we'll update the leaderboard. It will show real users, like my data and the history of data that I have. We're also going to, for testing, because as we're developing this and we're testing things, it's obnoxious for me to click up to 100 and we keep reloading and everything, right? So we need some methods to be able to test. And one of the things that we're going to do is lower all of those number of thresholds that we've had, make them really small for now. Obviously, if this was a real application, it is a real application. But if this is something that we're ready to put in front of users to put out to the world, we'll reinstate whatever numbers and thresholds we want it to have. But for now, we're going to make things a lot smaller, and we're going to make them lower so it's easier to get to. It's easier to iterate through some of our testing here. It's currently restoring. Okay, it's officially restored the version that we had. And so now, if we go out of our history mode, we're going to make changes from this point, and it's going to let us have a continuation as if this was from day one. So first off, I'm going to ask it some of those things that I already told you. Let's adjust the threshold amounts such that leaderboard shows up at 15 clicks. The decision between fire and ice shows up at 25 clicks, and the themed background idle animation starts or fades into visibility at 30 clicks on the counter. Let's also try and improve the background animation such that it's much larger, somewhere between 30% and 50% of the screen, and is centered for the entire display. Also, scaling and responding appropriately if the browser window size changes. Keep it a subtle ambient background, but something that makes the whole app feel like it's themed either fire or ice. Okay, so fixing the threshold numbers and trying to improve that background there. Let's give this a whirl. It's going to think about it here. It's going to fix those thresholds, improve the background. Pretty clear, understood what I was asking for. If you're tuning in and you haven't seen our first episode or you haven't played with Lovable before, it's here in the background. It's working on these code files. So whatever ones that are going to be necessary, it knows what it needs to do. It knows the files to either create, the files that need to be edited. If you understand code, it's obviously helpful. You can follow along with some of this and understand what's being done. But if you don't understand code, you can also just be looking at the results. Once it finishes that output, it refreshes and loads the app with the new changes. You can just talk to Lovable, and you can try and figure out the problem without any technical knowledge per se. There, it definitely helps. It always helps to have some understanding and some knowledge. But here we are, hoping that it was able to update those. I didn't see it refresh our screen. I'll go ahead and refresh it myself. So let's just test. We got the one click. We hit 15, there's our leaderboard. We hit 25, here's our decision. We choose ice, and once we hit 30, this is the background. It did make it bigger, but it kept it up in the corner. So I would love for it to fix that. I also really want to get back to where like the button stays in its single place. That first click makes the numbers move, and then when it hits the choice part again, it brings it back to the center. So what I'm going to ask it to do here is, can we redo, or let's say recreate the counter text box from scratch such that it behaves a little like the leaderboard button and comes in subtly from the top of the screen after the first click is made. This way, we should be able to keep the button centered in the view and make sure that as new elements are drawn and added to the interface, that the button isn't moving or adjusting position at all. Okay, so that's fixing our number there. I also noticed that while the pulsing background animation did get larger, it still is only, just a space, only in the top left corner of the interface. Can we try moving it again so it's centered? If necessary, recreate the background effect entirely, perhaps with more features and style. I don't know what it's going to get out of that. I also do catch a suggestion off recording and off stream that also I'm putting a lot in this message and we'll see how it handles all of it, but it is more or less two main concepts: trying to move the number, keep the button centered, and then building out this theme here. So adjust the fact that it's in the corner, add small snowflake or fire particles to each click after the user has entered a themed mode. Cool. So we're asking it to redo this number so that it doesn't change all of our alignment. A subtle slide in, the same way that if I'm clicking the leaderboard button, it pops in real clean, right? It doesn't interrupt my flow from a user experience standpoint. It's really nice because it doesn't distract me. It doesn't need to. It's not the most important thing at that time anyways. It's still the button, still about clicking that button, getting to a higher number. And so it's subtle, it's clean. I would like to have the same experience with the number. Like at the very beginning, it's this curiosity. It's all about, what is this button? It says click me, right? And so I want the user to be curious to click it, and then, don't take the attention away from the button. Bring in that number and just show like, oh, like you clicked once. You could click again. We have the toasts as well, and they're a little bit of a motion kind of distraction. We might do something at some point to adjust when the toasts come in, how often, but I don't want to stress about it too much. We also want to make sure that button stays in position. I don't want it to be changing position, because that's another thing from a user experience standpoint that is a little bit disorienting to the user, right? We want to keep it where it's at. And then otherwise, we're just trying to add more flavor and feel to that background. So it says that it's redesigned the counter, it's redone the themed background, and there's now a click particle effect. So button should stay perfectly centered in view. The counter will slide in. The background effects are properly centered and scaled. And at some point soon here, it's recommending that we'll refactor. Refactoring a file basically just means it's gotten big and kind of clunky. And it's a good practice to do in general with your code and with files in a web app. So it's recommending it. It recognizes that the index.tsx file is getting kind of out of hand. We need to break it up into smaller pieces, make it more manageable. It will help with performance, things like load time and stuff. It's going to just be better. So we'll need to do that at some point. But if I click this button, it's going to consume one of my messages, I believe. We've used 2 out of our 5 so far today. And I would love to maybe just bundle that with a couple other small requests. So let's come back over here. We see when I click, there is this cute little snowflake. It's up in the top, and I didn't specify, so I can't fault it. It put it where it thought it should. I was imagining off of the button. So let's do a refresh though. Let's start this over from 0. Here's our curiosity. Look at that. See, the number came in nice and big, number 1, right? And then we click. That feels much better to me. And then it looked like it was smaller before we refreshed. So there's the leaderboard gradually coming in. Another toast, another firework. Okay, so it's when we hit that choice point. That's when it makes it smaller. Let's retry that. I just want to get a quick feel for that. Leaderboard comes in smoothly, hits 25. It's still in the center. I would love to see an animation that makes that button split into 2. Because it is, again, it's a little bit, in my opinion, it feels a little jarring that the button goes away and then these 2 come in from the outside edges. Maybe it's okay. We're gonna pick fire this time. So I had a cute little fire thing there. And then I click firepower unleashed. Okay, so I'd say we successfully fixed keeping the button centered, and we got a better behavior with our number up top. I'd love to probably have the particle effect in a better spot. And I wouldn't mind, just behaves a little bit different. Has maybe like, think about like if you click, if you have like fire, it's kind of moving in all sort of random patterns and stuff. I wouldn't mind seeing some of that. And then snowflakes, likewise, they fall down and they gradually go down. So we could add some of that in here. I'm going to take note of that. If we have messages left after the next couple things, we'll come back to that today. If not, we will maybe try and revisit that tomorrow with some of our quota. What I want to cover now, though, is I want to create something that's going to let me save it's going to keep track of the counting. So in any time that we're going to save something that is going to maintain between sessions, if you refresh the page, or heaven forbid, maybe you pull it up on another browser or another device, if you want to maintain that information, whether it's something that you've input, someone else has brought in, written into the system, all of these things, including logging in, are going to require what's called a database. The recommended one and the easiest integration with Lovable is called Supabase. There's that button up in the corner here. We've got Supabase here. So I just want to walk you guys through the process of and explain some of the steps of getting Supabase and getting a database connected to your application. So if I go in here, this is Supabase's website. You will need to create an account. So you'll just sign up with whatever method you want. I believe they have, sign in with Google or with your email. Once you have created an account, it's going to put you through an onboarding process. That onboarding process will have you create what's called an organization. Just give it any kind of name that you want. And it will then have you create a project. You have to create a project name, and you also have to create a database password. Take note of that password. It should be something that's pretty secure. Data and data integrity and security and privacy is super important. So keep in mind as you build this kind of stuff out, and if you're making an application that other people are going to use, there are always inherent risks and liabilities that you need to be aware of. And I can't advise you perfectly on that. And I'm not even a total expert, but there are a lot of considerations. Lovable will try and help you with some of them, but nothing's perfect. So just keep in mind that what you've built out is, it's out there. People could do all kinds of things with it, and just be careful. So let's say now, hopefully you're able to figure out logging in, creating an account. Because I already have this account, right? We had the technical difficulties yesterday. I don't have that process for you on screen here. I already have my account created, the organization, and the project. But once you've got those set up, um, we're going to come to this section on the left here. It's called authentication. And then if you have users in your platform, you would be able to see them here. Something that we will want to set up before we integrate our database and connect it to Lovable is making sure, one, that people can sign up, but by default, that should be turned on. And we're going to just initially use email sign-in, which should also be enabled by default. However, you probably have this button, confirm email checked. You may want to uncheck that initially. Again, back to those threshold numbers that we changed. We're just trying to make things easier right now for testing. And so uncheck confirm email, click save. Once it's saved, everything should be good for now on the Supabase side. If we go back to Lovable, it's going to refresh our page. That's fine. We'll come up to Supabase here. And I've technically already connected it with my account, but the process would look something like this page. You would say, I want to use Supabase. It's going to pull up and it's going to say, oh, like, let's give authorization. If you've logged in, it should see your Supabase account talking to your Lovable account at that point. And if you have an organization set up, um, let's see, I think I called the organization MLP Daily. So you have to authorize, give it permission to talk to that. And then once it's connected, looks like it let me more or less just repeat that. You should see a list of what projects you have inside of Supabase. So I had already made this project called Click Counter in there, and all I should have to do now is click connect. There's a couple convenient links here. They would take you to the Supabase webpage. But we're going to click connect. It says it's now connected to my workspace. There's some documentation you can go to here. Keep that in mind. If you need some help, it might be worth looking at. But we're going to go back to our project for now. And you can see there's this message that was sent. And you can also see it didn't consume our quota for the day. We've still only sent 2. This was just a freebie message basically saying, hey, I set these things up with my accounts. Please take care of any kind of communication that you need, Lovable and Supabase, to talk to each other. Supabase then is all set up. It's connected. It recognizes we haven't put any data in there, right? And so it's going to suggest some things that we can do. One of those is creating user accounts and setting up a login process. Also storing real data. So there's edge functions, and we'll talk more about that in a future episode. But for now, we're going to follow some of this advice. We're going to keep building, like they say, and we are going to try and implement this user authentication login system. So we're going to tell Lovable, with my now connected Supabase project, can we set up authentication for our app? We will need an account creation, login. We will need to support account creation, login, and logout. Can we put a small menu icon in the bottom left corner of our application that when clicked would show the logged in user if logged in. I'm gonna take that out of the parentheses. A sign up button if they're logged in. But if there isn't a user logged in, we show the button that would allow them to log in. I feel like I got a little wordy with that, but it's okay. So we're gonna set up login, set up authentication. There's some other things I want to do, but I don't want to overwhelm it right now because this is a really important part. I want to keep this clean and simple. But the one thing I'm gonna add though is for the login process can, and actually here's what we're gonna do. I need to change the wording here. Put a menu in the corner that would show the logged in user, and let's just go up to that point. If I'm just gonna retype it. If the user is not logged in, have the button spawn a sign up / login modal, much like our, well, we don't even need to give it that instruction there, but the modal is going to be like that leaderboard thing that we have pop up center of the screen, that allows the user to toggle between either sign up to put sign up in quotations here, maybe sign up to be able to create an account, or log in if they already have an account. If the user is already logged in, let's have the menu button expand to show their uh, account name, as well as a logged out button. Okay, let's review this real quick here. We want to set up authentication, which means that there are user accounts that people can sign in and sign out with, that they can store their data associated with their account, right? We're going to put a small button in the bottom left corner of the app, and that will let users navigate to logging in or creating an account. Or if they're already signed in, it will let them see, a little bit of their user information as well as log out. I'm going to add one thing here. Keep it subtle so as not to distract from the main button in the center of the screen. Okay. I tried some things yesterday that I'm afraid part of what broke it was I tried to make this complex logic that at the beginning, I don't want to let people log in. I want them to recognize, like, if this was someone's first time, I don't want to lead them on thinking that this is something that they could log into. But I added some complexity into when it introduced login there, and I want to avoid some of that today if I can. Kind of getting a fresh chance at trying this all again. Real quick here, anytime you do something that's going to be modifying the database, again, back to like how important security is here, there's this concept here. You might see the wording enable row level security. That's an important thing. You don't want user A being able to see user B's information if it's not something that should be publicly available, right? So there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of, it's very important to be careful when you're making changes with your database and any data that you have. If you haven't seen or watched on the internet, data is a very important thing to protect and take care of. And there's a good chance that that's part of what this app hopefully is doing someday, is helping educate people more about data. So for now, though, the point is that anytime you're going to make a change to Supabase, Lovable is going to show you what changes it's going to be making. It's in a language called SQL or SQL, and it requires that you approve those changes. And you might not understand what these mean, and that's okay, but it's just being methodical and it's being careful about it. So for us, we're just going to click Apply Changes here. Doesn't count for our messages, but it, sends one here saying that we've reviewed the SQL queries or code there. See that the migration ran partially successful, but there was an error creating the trigger. Seems like I might not have cleaned things up well enough from yesterday. I reset our application. I did try to clear some things out from the database. It recognizes that there's something here. And hopefully it doesn't cause it any problems. It's just like, oh, that's good news. You've already got part of the things in place. And it says, now I'll implement the authentication UI. Hopefully this is still a clean enough slate that we don't have any issues. A subtle menu in the bottom left corner is requested. Let's create all the necessary components for authentication. So again, it's working on a whole bunch of files here for us. You can see we go all the way to the top, update Supabase client type definitions, source folder, integrations folder. Supabase has its own folder. It's working on the types.ts file. Scrolling down here, now it's working on a different file. It finished, it's so fast. So there's authentication now with Supabase. There's a small menu button. There's a modal, and it handles profiles connected to Supabase. Implementation respects the request to keep it subtle, which maybe we didn't refresh. I don't see it yet. Logout option when not logged in, sign in option that opens a modal where you can log in or create an account. It's reminding us here that the index file is getting pretty big. So if these changes look good, we might want to consider refactoring it. Just checking in here. It does say we're at 3 out of 5 when I did just send, I believe, our third message here. So maybe if we refresh, it'll decrement that. We'll see. Another thing that's important here is that it is hitting an error, and we didn't encounter any of those in day one, and so this could be a good opportunity that I can showcase. Sometimes it runs into some problems. It seems that we're trying to modify a read-only file. Please reattempt the changes without modifying this file. Interesting. What I'm going to ask, man, I guess we're going to potentially burn a message here. And maybe this is why I also didn't count one here, is that it wasn't able to actually make that change. What I'm going to ask it here is, can we make sure that outside of the, what did it call it here? This is the types.ts file that you don't have permission to modify. Make sure that all of the other changes and files were completed as necessary. And then can we remove the types.ts file? Be careful with this, I would say. Like if you're asking it to remove files that you don't know what they do, it could be dangerous. So that but in this case, what I want to do is recreate it from scratch. I'm not entirely sure why it can't modify it. It may be specifically that once you create a types.ts file, it's just something with Supabase that isn't supposed to be modified after that. This could have been something that maybe I didn't clean up properly from yesterday's adventure that didn't turn out the best. But I'm hoping that if I can ask it to just let's just recreate this file from scratch, then we shouldn't have an issue with modifying it. That's the hope. And I'm going to come back here and say around login and authentication were completed as necessary. We got some typos here. I don't think the AI is too worried and it can get past your typos there. But I'm also going to take the chance while we're in here and say, while we're at it, can we also refactor the index.ts file since it seems to be getting large enough to need refactoring? Let's give that message a whirl. Notice it doesn't immediately decrement my quota here. I'm thinking if it doesn't run into any errors, then it will possibly, take one of your messages from your daily limit there. And check and make sure all is well. Then we're going to refactor and we'll recreate the types.ts file from scratch. Seems that all the authentication was good. Going to proceed with refactoring and recreating the types. It's working on the main button component. It's got some motion in there apparently, so some nice smooth animation effects. That's cool. Interestingly enough, I do see it working on the firework effect. I don't necessarily know why off the top of my head, but there could be something in there that is connected with the authentication. So sweet. So it says it's refactored index.tsx. It's created a main button for the interaction logic, the firework animation, leaderboard, and index to use these new components. Okay, so these may have been things that existed in the index file previously, and that was part of what was bloating it, making it too big, needing to refactor down. So complex logic node of its own recreated types file with proper database type definitions for the profiles table. So no errors. Oh, there's errors here. Interesting. I just had to scroll down. Couldn't apply changes, and it's probably the same thing. Interesting. Well, here we are again. Running into problems again. So let's just play with it for a second. Let's see where we're at. What behavior are we getting? Leaderboard showed up, I think, at 15. 25 gives us a choice. Splendid. All right, view leaderboard. So let me show you guys real quick here. There's this button up here called the code viewer. And notice it does say read only. And if you want to update the code, set up sync with GitHub, which I'm hoping we don't have to do right now. I don't want to do too many new integrations and concepts in a single episode, but we will be able to, at some point, we will connect this to a GitHub account, and then we can go in, we can modify, we can view and manage the code outside of Lovable as well. So that allows us to make some adjustments and things in there. But what I want to point out is, and I believe if you have a paid plan, and we're demonstrating this for people, for now, just on the free plan, 5 a day messages, this is a view only situation for the code. But if you're on a paid plan, I believe you have a limited editor in here as well. What I want to show though is the error, the file that we're having issues with here is in source integrations Supabase, and it's the types TS. So I go back to our code viewer here. That was source integrations Supabase, and then it's this types.ts file. So for some reason or another, it's not allowed to modify what's in here. It potentially needs to make some sort of change, and it's not able to. If this was VS Code or somewhere else, I could probably delete this file. It could be that maybe the Supabase side of things is what's blocking the permissions on this. I would really love to figure it out. We may need to do a little bit of Google searching here, and let's give it a try here. So I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna copy my error code. I'm gonna go to just a good old plain Google search, and we'll see what does it give here. So TypeScript throwing an error when I try to create. Let's see what Stack Overflow tells us. This is not the same file. In fact, this is an entirely different file, but it is related to not being able to write to files, and it is related to Supabase. Name the end of the file with JS. You have to name your files with TS. So TypeScript files TS, JavaScript files JS. It works now. Okay, I don't think that's the same as our issue here. Ours specifically is a TypeScript file here, and what we probably should remove from this is that we can't modify Supabase types TS. Maybe we've got a little too much in our search bar here, right? We're gonna just say can't modify read-only file Supabase types.ts. After modifying this file, you can import. Okay, that seems interesting. This is almost implying that someone's able to modify it. It's all quiet while I'm reading, as if I'm reading, I'm not talking. I'm going to now just shorten our search even further and just say we can't modify the Supabase types TS. What about the lovable? Can't modify. Deprecated. Generating TypeScript. Some of this is the wonderful world of troubleshooting your code. I do see Supabase in this thread. I do see React, and the projects inside of Lovable are built in React, so it's relevant in some ways here. I'm wondering if I should have a Google search here. Lovable can't modify a Supabase file. Supabase integration. If you're having trouble modifying Supabase file, this is, by the way, AI suggestion from Google here. Ensure you have the necessary permissions. You're using the correct methods for interacting with the Supabase storage or database. Lovable documentation talks about the appropriate ways. Doing policies, authentication, file storage issues, update, table permissions, query, data types. Lovable documentation. We may want to look at that guy. Supabase button. Yeah, maybe we'll give a try there. Oh, let's see. If you're making changes to Supabase, you might need to restart. Well, these are commands that you typically run in a terminal window or a command line, and we don't have that interface with Lovable, so that could be fun. Still having issues, contact Lovable or Supabase support for assistance. Great. If we look at the documentation here, it's got some basics. This is something that's probably worth anybody looking into. There's an FAQ, there's setup, talks about adding authentication. I don't think I see anything here about troubleshooting. prevent database changes. Live app. There's some videos here, which is great. Connecting, adding authentication. Example prompt, add login. Wow, 2 words for a prompt. Maybe I'm going over the top, guys. Create users directly via the dashboard. Disable. This is the part I showed you guys. They recommend disabling the email verification up front. For now, keep that in mind. Storing data, storing secrets, edge functions. Before you deploy your app to production or use any real data, you need to review and set up the appropriate row level security policies. Lovable can help with that. Okay, let's go check in Supabase here and we'll just refresh and then we'll check and see maybe if there's any errors. It does have this advisors. There are some warnings. We can see weak password protection is disabled. There's a couple of functions here. Handle new user and reset daily clicks. That is an artifact from efforts that I made yesterday. Tell you what, guys, I really don't want to give this this recording a whole nother day's worth of going by cleaning up everything again. Let's just go back to Lovable. Let's say why is the types.ts file why can't you modify the types.ts file? Is there any way that we can delete it and then recreate it as needed? Or is there a way that we can still finalize the setup of our authentication process without modifying the types.ts file? If not, is there another way to just reset our, I don't know if I'm giving it too many questions and thoughts here, entire authentication setup and try and create it from scratch? Haven't burned any of the credits here again because I think it keeps running into this error, which is gracious but also appropriate of Lovable. That if you're going to be running into errors, it would just add it would just add salt to the wound, right? That things aren't working and I'm not getting anywhere. So it looks like in this case, it's talked through the situation. I'm going to need to read it, and it's giving me some options, which is kind of cool. So it is a directory marked as read only, means I'm not allowed to modify it directly. It's automatically generated by Supabase based on database schema. We can work with existing types file and adapt our code to match it. That was something that I couldn't articulate the words, but I was wondering something along those lines. We could regenerate the types file outside of our conversation using the Supabase CLI, so I could do some manual work on the command line, or we can implement authentication without relying on strict typing from the types file. This is excellent. This is better than I expected. Lovable seems to have understood my situation, and it's given me some options here, which is really, really helpful. Let me check if our authentication implementation is working correctly with the current setup. Looking at the code base, I see we've implemented the system, but we may need to make some adjustments to ensure it works properly with the current types. And I'm not an expert on Supabase or types, the types file. So it's asking, would I like it to adjust our code, implement a simpler approach that doesn't rely on strict types, or continue with the current implementation, test if it works before making changes? I'm going to go into the fact that it mentioned it's generated by Supabase based on our database schema. Makes me almost wonder and wish if there's a way that we could get rid of it from Supabase. So I'm looking at the logs and analytics section here, just because I want to see maybe this is the right place. Maybe this isn't the right place. I don't think this is what I was imagining it was. This is going to let me run a SQL command and see, and maybe this is what I have to do. So let's run and just give this timestamp. It's going to give me, okay, so these are the 5 latest events, and they were all date-wise, they were all today. So cast, let's up this limit. Let's look at a few more. Everything still is today. Integrations. Looks like there's nothing from the Supabase that shows the Lovable side. Lovable's pulling from here. We look at reports, requests, storage, database. Let's go with, if one of you guys were in this situation and you didn't have a lot of knowledge or understanding of the Supabase setup, let's go with something that's simple here. So that means that we either are going to adapt our existing code to match the types file, um, or we're going to, according to this, continue with implementation and test if it works. I don't know if it didn't try that already. I guess I'm a little surprised, but uh, maybe not. It hit an error, and that makes sense. Um, can we first test if the current implementation would work as is before making any changes? If it doesn't work, can we implement a simple authentication? Um, can you do the preferred of option 1 or 2? Option 1, adjusting, I can spell, adjusting our code to work with the existing types file, or option 2, uh, implementing things more simply and not relying on strict types. Whichever of the two is a better choice for our current situation. So you might think, oh, we're burning through messages here, just trying to troubleshoot this single problem. But again, take note, we're still at the 3 of 5 here. So they've done a pretty good job at not hosing us over on our daily limit. It says it should work as is, but we can make a few adjustments to ensure it's compatible with the existing types without modifying it. Let's optimize our authentication setup to work with the current environment. I think, and just to communicate this, because maybe you didn't see it, but I felt it. We got through initially when I asked it to make the authentication, and it said everything was good, and I hadn't scrolled yet to see that there was an error, and I was like, "It's great." And then we get the error, and I was like, "Oh no!" Especially, like, for the record too, this is actually my first time in Lovable seeing this error of I can't modify a file. Normally there are other code related errors, and Lovable has this way that you can click a wrench, try and fix things, and a lot of times it does automatically fix its own errors. um, I was a little worried about this one, right? And thankfully we were able to talk through it, and you know I think it's worth mentioning that, keep your calm, and take a little bit of reassurance now that until you get past that error, most likely Lovable is not going to take any, it's not going to burn any of your messages. So you can see now we've decremented, it doesn't have an error, and hopefully all is well, right? We took care of a few things in that earlier message, refactoring the code and such. And so keep your calm and do whatever you can to understand as much about the problem as possible, and then just talk with Lovable and say, hold on, like, what are my options? Is there another way to approach this? Can we just try things over from scratch? Just the same way that you would try and solve any problem in life, potentially, right? But have it just as a conversation with Lovable. So obviously, we can see it's in the top left corner, and I totally could have had a typo, but I intended for it to be bottom left. But that's not what I said. It's putting sign in, sign up. That's not quite what we wanted either, right? We wanted a single, like, obscured button, kind of not loud and in your face, that distracts. And we wanted to spawn a modal. But I'm going to read through here. We're going to play with it some. We're going to see what we've got. So it does also look like it might still be making some modifications. So let's read this and probably apply changes. It's been adjusted to work. Uses standard Supabase auth, implements complete authentication flow. User menu, whoops, top left corner. Creates a profile table. Okay, good. And we'll see the user menu in the top left. Try signing up and logging in to test if it works. Usually apply changes. This is probably referring to some SQL or database modifications. Yeah, and when I clicked it, right, it approves it. Although I didn't see any SQL, obviously. But we'll let it finish it. Finish the migration. It has the necessary row level security and triggers. Now, okay, so it is going to do a little bit more code, supposedly. Dashboard page for authenticated users. That seems a little bit off the wall. I don't think I asked for that. Updating existing components to work with the new profiles table. That's important. We want that. So before I play too much and come to any conclusions over here with what it looks like at the moment, we're going to let it finish. We've updated the code. Wow. Wow. That's rough. That's crazy. I don't know where it got off thinking that I wanted a dashboard, a login page, right? I specifically asked for a modal earlier. Um, and this completely takes away from that experience of coming into the app with the curiosity and the single button. But let's play with it. I showed you guys at the beginning of this episode that we rewound yesterday's mistakes by going back a version. If we can click through this and understand what needs to change and it's clear, we can move forward. But if it's not, we could also try running back a step. We can go back to a previous version and try again. So testing authentication. Okay, so clicking all of this does nothing, but we do have sign in and sign up. This is the modal that I was hoping for and expecting. It looks like you can even toggle between these. So let's come in here. We're going to sign up and we're going to say super top secret password. None of you know. I'm going to make my account. No, please don't save that. Okay, toast activity. This is, wow, this is absolutely insane. My app is gone. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, good news, guys. Sounds like we're going to be reverting. Implementation. What if I click on this restore button? Okay, still in the wait. Okay. We restored to an earlier version, which, mind you, we now have a sign out option up here with a logo, and we do have our clicking. So between this version that I just restored to and whatever these other weird changes that it imagined up that would be this version here, it was crazy. It wiped out everything and went to like who knows what. Okay, 10 clicks, keep going. Light mode, dark mode. I'm gonna click refresh here. We were at how many clicks, everyone? 10. Okay. So even though I'm logged in, it doesn't seem like it is tracking my number of clicks. There's our leaderboard still behaving. We've got our choice at 25. We've got those effects in that corner. Okay. Let's come up here. Let's go sign out. Okay. This is what we were seeing for a minute, and it was before I accepted those changes, those SQL changes. Let's go back to sign in. Okay. It seems more or less like it worked. It signed us out. It signed us back in. Okay, what I want to do though is this time I'm going to sign out. Notice how our number doesn't reset there. We're going to refresh the page now that we're signed out. 1, 2, 3. Okay, refresh again. It's going to put us back down to presumably 0. Now I'm going to come back and sign in. Welcome back. Okay, so it recognizes we're there. The user account's there, but that number is off. So everything else is still working. Seems like great. Okay, hit the refresh. We're logged in. The refresh still put us back. That's all right. I want to showcase super quick here. Back over in Supabase, we'll come to this authentication page again. And this time we're in users, and you can see we have an entry here, this record here, and that's my user account that I've created. It also created a table for us called profiles, and there's also an associated profile for me here. It shows that there is total clicks and daily clicks, as well as my last daily reset, when the account was created, and a few other things, but it doesn't seem to be updating those clicks based on what I'm clicking over in the application. So we've got a few things that we can work with here. Again, we're at this restored version. And hopefully, like as I continue on with, oh, we got one message left for the day. What we want to adjust is the fact that I've got a working user account now with login and logout, and log out, and the rest of the app seems to work like it did before. Let me check something real quick here too. Get to 15. What does the leaderboard look like? Leaderboard, okay. I still got all the peoples there. However, the behavior of my click count doesn't seem to work with my profile or account the way that I would expect it. If I log out, the click counter and in theme and everything should reset all back to 0. But then if I log in again, regardless of what might be present in that session, I want to load the click count and theme selection that was saved in my account/profile. Let me reread this, make sure this makes sense. Logging out, click counter goes back to 0, everything wipes. And then if I log in again, I want it to pull my data, load the click count, and them, the selection, the button choice, let's call it. And then we can even put in parentheses fire or ice theme that was saved in my account profile. Also in the expanding user menu, can we show total and daily click totals? Add to the profile table a column for last login timestamp. That's a separate little feature there I'm looking for. And lastly, can we change the login? Let's see, what did it call it? Sign in and sign up. Sign in and sign up buttons, and I'm going to separate those in quotations still. I'll put the word and back in there. Back to my original idea of a subtle user menu that when logged out just spawns the login mode. All right, I think I put too much in here, but I'm feeling anxious. Like there's some things that broke and I want to get it back to state here. I'm just explaining what went wrong, telling it how I want to handle the login, logout state of the number and keeping track of that. Saying I want to display the totals in my little menu there, make a small change to our database, and fix it back to that button that we were hoping for. We'll run that guy, and noting here, it was our last message. However, I think, again, it's going to wait until it finishes executing without an error before we should keep an eye on that. Let's apply those SQL changes. I asked obviously for that new column of their last login. It's actually creating that there with that line. And it looks like it's handling something about public profiles. I would imagine it needs to add something in there as well for tracking my selection of fire versus ice. And I might have missed it. It might be in there already. But I didn't see it here. And I'm still not seeing it. Oh, it does. It is. It's here. It's the theme. Okay. So made some SQL changes. It's run. The SQL changes have been applied, and now it's going to update and modify any of the code files that it needs to be working with there. So it's partway through our changes here. If I come back up, still hasn't decremented the daily credits. It's working on index.tsx, which more or less is this page. You can see different pages. We don't have multiple pages yet in this application. It's all happening on index, but we'll look at some of what it's doing here. It's got a lot of lines on code. Wouldn't be surprised if it recommends that we refactor index.tsx at some point. I called it. Look at that, guys. Just because it said, like it was pushing 300 lines of code. So it's made some changes. App persists. The click count, the user menu is updated. Sure enough, we have total clicks. We have today's clicks. Sign in, sign up button has been changed to a subtle menu. We'll have to be logged out to verify that. Last login was added to the table. It's now saved when they're back in. So let's give this a test here. I'm also curious. We're going to have to tell it at some point that we want to see real user data here in the leaderboard. There's a chance that maybe it makes some assumptions and figures that out on its own. It actually did that in my attempts yesterday, but I'm going to hit sign out this time. It cleared the 23, notice. And this button is now just a little person button, which I think we can make it even more subtle. What I'd love to do is before maybe 5 clicks, it is maybe just really dim. And so it's technically there. If somebody wants it, they could come find it. But once they've clicked a few times, then it's a little bit brighter and it's like, oh, maybe there's something else here for me to look at. It does follow the theme really well, except their hover behavior is a little bit different. But it follows, right, that we've got this light and dark mode icon in one corner. We've got the person in the other. So I do like that quite a bit. It did finally, by the way, take our final message credit there. So now we're clicking. We hit 15. There's the leaderboard. Okay. If we come up, well, that's a menu button, and this is a modal, so it's okay. I'm not going to complain about that for now. We'll make an adjustment someday. Perfect. So this time I signed in, it pulled me up to 23. And I will say, amidst some of the errors and mistakes that I ran into yesterday, I never got that part of it working. So the click button is broken now, but now it works. I refreshed. We're at this choice point now. So we're going to pick fire. Got that animation in the corner. We'll fix more of that again someday still. Let's come check the leaderboard here. All time, we're here at the bottom. Daily, we're halfway up. Okay. What's like light mode here with our fire theme? Okay. You can see total clicks and today's clicks, they're different. There's a chance that it's just taking some time to update. Tells us the theme here. What I want to show you guys now is over in the database. If we, okay, I didn't even have to refresh it. Note that it took note of what our theme was, fire. It's got the total clicks and the daily clicks in here. So as well as this is what I asked it to create is a last login column. So it's keeping track of whenever the last time that I logged into the application. It's potentially helpful for identifying like how active your users are, right? If there's somebody that hasn't logged in for 30 days, 60 days, it's worth noting that, right? And understanding the difference in how many users are still regularly using your platform. So it seems like we've got something here that's, it's some steps beyond what we had the first day. There's, as usual, right? There's plenty of things that need to be adjusted and tweaked, but we do have this functioning thing. Yeah, today's clicks are lagging, or what it might have been is that I clicked up to something like 16 or such. I logged out and it may have reset today's clicks on that login. So we can test that out real quick too here. Properly cleared everything. We could start clicking if we wanted. Now, what would be interesting is to create a new account here. There's no email verification, keep in mind, and so I can just put in John at johnmail.com. Since there's no verification, right, we can use pretty much whatever we want. Oh, and note, we have a nice little error here if it's an invalid account because I did login instead of sign up. So john at johnmail.com. Create account. Okay, so I'm pretty sure we had a number here, right? And it had gotten up to a certain amount. Looks like upon login, our interface is kind of broken. None of the buttons work, but a simple refresh and everything is functional again. John's got 9 clicks. That's great. We can sign him out. It clears our 9. We can click. This time, let's go up to 25. That's an interesting spot. Let's go into the ice. We're at 31. Now let's do sign up, sign in. We're going to sign up, and we're going to call this Jane at Jane Mail. All right, it reset us. But here's another bug that we found, right? Because it thought that I was over 25. It's like, oh, you need to make a choice, because what it probably did here, if we go look at our database, if we go look, we see that here's Jane, and okay, her clicks are at 0, and her theme is null. It's also interesting to see John's theme is null. It didn't take the ice, I believe, is what we just chose, right? Let's go back in. Oh, it's reloading it, and we're Jane. Okay, so if you log in, it's not going to save your temporary number that you're at. You have to log in, and then it's going to start saving. We'll have to fix that because the behavior should be that this lets someone come in and play with it and start clicking before they even have to make an account. And it shouldn't force them to make an account either. It should just be noted and maybe advised to the user that if they don't save their progress by making an account, they'll start over next time. So we've made a few different users now, and we can see that none of them are showing up on the leaderboard. So we'll make that adjustment tomorrow probably as well. The last thing that we want to check here is if we go back to our first account that we had. Pulls us back to 64. It requires a refresh because the buttons are broken. And then we check, okay, no, it still is showing that today's clicks are going up. So I'm not sure what got us like 6 clicks off there, but obviously we got a bunch of bugs, but we do have new functionality. We do have login. It's working. I have yet another session longer than I intended. So I will be sure to try and trim this up for everyone watching at home / on YouTube. And thanks again for tuning in for episode 2/2.5 of MLP Daily, a shared journey with Lovable. We'll be back next week, and we'll have more episodes to go as we continue to build this guy out. Thanks again, everybody.